The Russian hypersonic ballistic missile, Oreshnik, continues to stir up the military community, which is still analyzing the threat it poses. Naturally, the question has arisen. Could this Russian missile represent a serious threat to American aircraft carriers? Since its emergence, does the very existence of aircraft carriers no longer make sense? Aircraft carriers are key elements in modern naval strategy, providing mobile platforms for projecting power far beyond national borders. Their primary missions include maintaining air superiority, striking land and sea targets, intelligence gathering, and coordinating military operations. The ability of aircraft carriers to deploy a diverse arsenal of fighters, bombers, and reconnaissance planes makes them indispensable in operations in areas with restricted access or without available infrastructure for land-based aircraft. Additionally, they play a central role in humanitarian aid operations, evacuation, and demonstrating power, acting as symbols of national influence in international waters. On the other hand, aircraft carriers are complex and costly platforms that require significant resources for maintenance, protection, and logistics. They often depend on accompanying combat ships and submarines to ensure their safety in high-risk zones vulnerable to enemy strikes, including missile attacks and underwater threats. With the development of new weapon technologies, such as hypersonic missiles and autonomous underwater systems, their vulnerability is increasing, raising doubts about their effectiveness in potential high-intensity conflicts. The Russian missile, Oreshnik, a hypersonic missile equipped with multiple warheads, MIRV, has recently attracted significant attention after an attack on a Ukrainian factory in Dnipro. This event has reopened the question of the effectiveness and future utility of traditional aircraft carriers in modern warfare, particularly when confronted with increasingly advanced missile technologies. The Oreshnik hypersonic missile, with its capability to carry multiple warheads, has the potential to create a saturation effect. This means that several warheads can be fired at a target within a broad zone simultaneously. This tactic is particularly dangerous for strategically important targets such as aircraft carriers, which, even with modern missile defense systems, would have difficulty defending against such an attack. Despite their high level of protection, aircraft carriers rely on a limited number of weapon systems to fend off attacks. The problem arises when multiple missiles strike the ship simultaneously. Each individual missile can be intercepted by existing defense systems, such as the CHOOS, close-in weapon system, or anti-missile defense missiles. However, with the saturation of defenses, when the number of incoming threats exceeds the capacity for response, an aircraft carrier becomes vulnerable. Oreshnik, with its numerous warheads, could overwhelm the ship's defenses, causing significant damage to key components and systems. Even if not all missiles succeed in hitting the aircraft carrier, the attack could cause serious damage. For example, navigation systems, communication systems, or the aviation decks, which are crucial for the ship's operations, could be rendered completely or partially inoperable. If Oreshnik were to strike even one part of the carrier's core functions, it would be forced to retreat for repairs, weakening its combat effectiveness and removing it from operational status. This makes the tactical use of missiles with a saturation effect extremely dangerous, as a single successful strike could have major consequences for the aircraft carrier and its crew. The goal of Oreshnik may be to neutralize the aircraft carrier without fully destroying it. A strike on the deck, where the aircraft are located, could make it impossible to use them, diminishing the ship's ability to carry out its primary missions. If the missile strikes vital storage areas used for supplies and ammunition, it could cause severe logistical difficulties, forcing the ship to withdraw due to limited supplies. In the case of a nuclear strike, even with the use of a smaller warhead, the radiation and thermal effects could cause irreparable damage, rendering the aircraft carrier non-operational for an extended period. Ultimately, hypersonic missiles carrying nuclear warheads could neutralize strategically important platforms, forcing these military units to retreat and recover far from the front lines. The relative cost aspect significantly complicates the arguments for further production of aircraft carriers, especially when compared to emerging hypersonic missiles like Oreshnik. Aircraft carriers are among the most expensive military platforms in the world, with an approximate production cost of around $10 billion for the latest classes, such as the Nimitz or Ford classes of the U.S. Navy. These ships require not only enormous initial investments but also constant costs for maintenance, repairs, crews, fuel, and armament. The average service life of an aircraft carrier is about 50 years, but during this time, it will undergo numerous repairs, upgrades, and require costly logistics. At the same time, hypersonic missiles like Oreshnik represent a significantly smaller investment compared to the aircraft and accompanying equipment of an aircraft carrier. According to various sources, the production cost of an Oreshnik missile is comparable to that of the Russian intercontinental ballistic missile, Yars, which cost around $30 million in 2011. Under current conditions, with inflation and technological advancements, the cost of the Oreshnik missile could reach around $40.3 million by 2023. This is a significantly lower price in the context of the high cost of aircraft carriers, and at the same time, a missile of this type can cause serious damage to strategically important targets, neutralizing the combat capability of high-value ships, such as aircraft carriers, without the need for their complete destruction. This cost disparity calls into question the financial justification for investing in aircraft carriers, especially in the context of the modern technological evolution of weapons. Hypersonic missiles are not only significantly cheaper but also offer exceptional effectiveness against high-value targets. The problem of limited resources on a global scale is also deepening, as nations must balance traditional methods of naval power with emerging, but increasingly effective and cost-efficient, weapons. In this context, missiles like Oreshnik offer a strategic advantage to nations that do not have such large military budgets, as they can fulfill almost the same force projection function as larger and more expensive combat platforms. Furthermore, hypersonic missiles offer a significant advantage in the effectiveness of attacks against maritime targets, utilizing new technologies that allow for reaching targets at speeds that make defense nearly impossible. It is difficult to provide an answer to a question that specifically considers a hypothetical combat scenario. Experience shows that while the best technology on paper may seem unbeatable, a weapon costing $300 can defeat it. The fact remains, however, that aircraft carriers were designed to counter threats known to military forces. Oreshnik is an example of an old technology in a new form and perhaps represents the biggest challenge to today's military systems. Aircraft carriers are no exception. In fact, they are much more vulnerable today than they were yesterday.